Apple was 90 days away from bankruptcy, and how Microsoft saved it. It is no surprise that Apple has become the first American company with a $1 trillion valuation on the stock market, given the widespread popularity of their devices and the strong loyalty of their customers. However, it is worth noting that just 20 years ago, Apple was facing bankruptcy, and it was not Steve Jobs who rescued them, but rather their main competitor at the time, Microsoft. Let's take a trip back in time to the wacky and wild world of 1997. Back then, Apple was a little different than it is today. They weren't selling iPhones or iPads, they were all about computers. But unfortunately for them, their computers were just too darn expensive for most people to afford. To make matters worse, they refused to let other companies use their operating system, so everyone was flocking to Microsoft instead. And let me tell you, Microsoft was like that cool kid in school that everyone wanted to be friends with. They had a whopping 90% market share, which meant that almost all software was being made for Windows. Poor little Apple was left in the dust with less than 10% market share. Imagine being a software developer back then. You had to make a tough choice. Do you develop programs only for Windows? Or do you throw extra time and money into making it work for Apple too? It was a real head scratcher. But at least Apple had some good profit margins, right? It's like they say, sometimes it's better to be the expensive option than the cheap one. During the time when Apple was facing declining sales and hiring unsuccessful CEOs, Steve Jobs was not a part of the company, as he had been forced out in 1985 by the board of directors. However, in 1997, due to the dire state of the company, the board brought Steve back. In February of that year, Next, the company that Steve founded after leaving Apple, was acquired by Apple. Despite this acquisition, Steve did not receive any cash payment due to the poor financial situation of Apple at the time. Instead, he was given 1.5 million Apple shares. But even that wasn't enough. By the end of July, Apple had less than 90 days worth of cash left in the bank. Apple was worth less than $3 billion and had lost over $1 billion in a single year. But then, on the 6th of August 1997, Steve Jobs made an announcement that shocked the world. He announced a partnership with Microsoft, Apple's biggest competitor, to the surprise and hesitation of the audience. I'd like to announce one of our first partnerships today. A very, very meaningful one. And that is one with Microsoft. Next, we have taken a look at browsers out there, and Apple has decided to make Internet Explorer its default browser on the Macintosh, since we believe in choice. The speech seemed to convey a message of surrender. And lastly, Microsoft is making an investment in Apple. Microsoft is buying $150 million worth of Apple stock at market price. It is non-voting shares, meaning that Microsoft was not trying to acquire Apple, but rather just funding it. The deal also included Microsoft's commitment to release Microsoft Office on Macintosh for the next 5 years. The second part of this is that Microsoft is committing to release Microsoft Office on Macintosh for the next 5 years. Apple made a significant achievement by resolving a software problem that had been affecting the company's performance. Microsoft Office was a vital component of Apple computers, and it was impossible to sell them without the software. Bill Gates contributed to this breakthrough by giving Apple shares at the market price instead of just buying them from the market. However, the question that many people asked was, why did Bill Gates do it? Why save Apple on the eve of what would have been their death at the hands of Microsoft? It turns out that Bill Gates wasn't doing this out of the kindness of his heart. Back then, he had a rather negative reputation as a cutthroat businessman who was willing to do anything to succeed in his industry. Moreover, Microsoft was attracting the attention of antitrust regulators, and the Department of Justice had been preparing its case against Microsoft since 1993. After partnering with Apple for less than a year, Bill Gates was summoned by the Department of Justice for a detailed, 3-day-long questioning. The DOJ argued that Microsoft was using its market dominance to create unfair barriers for competitors and stifle competition. And it's clear that Bill Gates' partnership with Apple, in an effort to save the company from bankruptcy, played a major role in changing their perception of Microsoft and diffusing the pending antitrust case. So one can say that it was a good thing that Apple and Microsoft became frenemies for a time. The partnership played a crucial role in saving Apple from an uncertain future and creating the foundation for its ultimate success today. It also allowed Microsoft to buy some goodwill from the government and helped cement Bill Gates' place in history as one of the most influential tech leaders of all time. With regard to the Apple shares that Microsoft owned, Bill Gates sold them as soon as they served their purpose. He converted his preferential non-voting Apple shares into regular stock once the DOJ had settled with Microsoft. He ended up with 18.2 million shares of Apple, which he sold in 2003. However, Apple stock has since performed remarkably well. It has split twice, once at a 2-to-1 ratio in 2005, and again at a 7-to-1 ratio in 2014. The 18.2 million shares that Bill Gates sold in 2003 would be worth $254 million today. As of August 2018, Apple's stock price was approximately $210 per share, making Microsoft's former stake worth $53.5 billion today. It's amazing to think that a single investment of $150 million saved Apple from bankruptcy and turned into a staggering $53.5 billion in just 20 years. It's like Steve Jobs always said, stay hungry, stay foolish. And it looks like the same advice applies to Bill Gates as well. Now, Apple is a global giant that almost everyone knows and loves, but back in 1997, they were a company on the brink of financial ruin, and it was only due to an unlikely partnership with their biggest competitor that they were able to survive. So, the next time you are admiring your iPhone or MacBook and marveling at how Apple has become such a powerful company, take a moment to remember that it all started with Steve Jobs' return in 1997 and his partnership with Microsoft. Without this unique collaboration, Apple may have gone the way of the dodo. It just goes to show that interesting things can happen when two rivals come together for a common cause. Show some love by liking this video, and don't forget to comment and subscribe to our channel for more videos. Thanks for watching!